So we go on to our third speaker, Dr. Gayatri Mahadevan, who's again was senior consultant at Drishti Eye Care Center, Bangalore, Karnataka. And she's a young budding ophthalmologist with 5 years experience.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so we have lots to know from you. How to optimize a corporate practice.
Okay. A very good afternoon to all of y'all, and special thanks to Dr. Chitra ma'am and ARC for giving me this wonderful opportunity today. I would be talking on optimizing a corporate practice. We are basically now in the era of globalization and modernization, where turnover. You can hear me?
And moved. It's not moving to the next slide.
It's not
Close.
Ambika, you need to be on mute, and we have to. Yes.
Ma'am, can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So let me just repeat. Now we are in the era of globalization and modernization, where the turnover in medical tourism is expected to be so high, almost in trillions in this decade. So with such a bright future, obviously health sector facilities are moving forward from conventional practices towards providing luxury and modernization, which led to the evolution of corporation and a corporate culture, which is nothing but a service-oriented business where they consider patient satisfaction as the only parameter to measure success. They basically focus on a very smooth patient flow and overall smooth patient experience. And most of these corporations have a mission, and almost all the members of the company fall in line or align themselves towards serving the mission. With this brief introduction, I would like to divide my talk today into two parts. As a doctor who is posted or working with a corporation would develop themselves both clinically as well as non-clinically. Coming to the non-clinical skill set, which a doctor can improvise, there exists a definite division of labor in corporations where each person has a responsible role to play. This is a perfect example of an amalgamation of using a medical staff along with a non-medical or administrative personnel for smooth successful operations. We as a medical officer would be in charge of an entire unit. With this clear demarcation of responsibility, it is possible for a doctor to develop certain skills, such as the administration skills. It is very essential that every doctor must learn to become a good administrator. It is nothing but directing work, delegating work, supervising work, and making sure that work gets done. You would have to interact with your local manager on day-to-day basis, and your interaction would be based on your day performance, day revenue generation, or it can be even monthly or bi-monthly audits, and keeping a check on all the other departments if there is a correct maintenance of records and if there is an excess or shortage or etc. So these are nothing but administrative skills which can be honed by tying up with a corporate setup. Corporate hospitals cater to a wide variety of patients. They cater to patients with patients belonging to various segments. So basically, you would be interacting with housekeeping personnel at one point of the day, and all the way to the most elite patients. So you would be developing your communication skills. This is in fact one of the most important skills that you can acquire by tying up with corporations. You would be the head of the unit, so you would be leading the unit by example. So all the members of your team would look up to you. So you've got to be proficient, you've got to be punctual, and you have to be empathetic. You also get to be a spokesperson where you represent your entire unit in bi-monthly meetings or monthly meetings. You can actually set a standard of operations or establish a standard of practice care that you would be wanting to provide in your unit. You can also enforce rules and make sure that your entire center or your unit abides by it. For example, in this COVID era, you would want to ensure that there is COVID appropriate behavior, making sure that patients are adequately spaced and not examining patients without a mask, etc. The most important skill that you can acquire is you would get to train your staff. You can actually improvise them, you can reinforce them, you can revise certain concepts, thereby training your team members. You can also aid in hiring your team members and thereby helping in team building. This slide depicts the basics of management skills. I would like to just give an example. Suppose you're planning to conduct an eye camp. So the first thing that you would do is you would want to plan about the eye camp. You would interact with your manager and decide that where you want to conduct the camp. Then you would organize the camp with your manager by approaching a local unit or a Zilla Panchayat or a sponsor, etc. After doing this, the next step in making sure your camp runs successfully is thinking about staffing. You would want to plan your staffing in such a way that your center, that is your base, works as well as your team that goes to the camp is well staffed. You would also be directing your staff as to what services they would be providing, whether it is just going to be glass prescriptions or if it's going to be cataract screening, etc. The most important part is you would be controlling your expenses and thereby aiding or improving your revenue. Marketing activities keep happening throughout the year. Corporates, what they do is they create an awareness about their existence in a city with a boom. So there are hoardings all over the city. There is multiple YouTube campaigning. There are paper advertisement, TV advertisements, etc. So with this, the boon to the doctor is that there would be a great influx of patients, and you would get to cater to them, and you can actually ask each and every patient to write a good review about you in Google, etc., thereby improving your clientele. With these non-clinical skills, you can also definitely develop a few clinical skills by aligning with corporations. For example, EMR. So each and every corporation has, different corporate setup has EMR, which is a boon to a doctor. You would get to document your patient details. You can access your patient details. You can give them a printout with all your findings, which would be useful for them for carrying forward to another doctor or etc. Apart from that, the main mantra in a corporate setup is happy patients. So they usually do not compromise on that, and the surgeon skills or the doctor skills have to be top notch. Once you are performing really well and your skills are really good, you would get an opportunity to cover other units, thereby again increasing your proficiency. Because these hospitals are actually well funded, they usually have advanced equipments in almost all their centers. They definitely make sure that they have a good OT infrastructure. And usually it is a modular OT where the safety of the patient is prioritized. So you will definitely be having a good OT setup. You as a doctor would have a free hand in procuring drugs or devices, etc. And almost all the procedures are NABH compliant. Apart from this, the most important advantage is for a doctor is that they have a very good support system. Usually we have a WhatsApp group where all the doctors of all the centers are available, and you have senior doctors who are very friendly and approachable, and you can ask them queries. Usually they set up protocols which are followed by all the units. Frequent webinars are conducted, so there is continued learning for doctor. Also, there's availability of specialty services. For example, I'm just an anterior segment surgeon. If I want a retina specialist to come to my center or handle retina care, then I can just give them a call saying I have so many patients, and they usually come and provide those services. And also they have a facility for providing training for doctors. Perhaps this might be the most appealing slide in my presentation. The most important takeaway is that the progress for a doctor in a corporate hospital is performance oriented. If you perform well, you climb up the hierarchical ladder. And obviously it looks good on your resume, and you also get to develop good contacts. I would like to conclude my talk by just saying that this was an overview of corporate practice. It is very imperative for a doctor to even develop the non-clinical skill set for an overall individual growth. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
That was a wonderful talk, and you did good justice to it. So let's try to run through some questions. And even though I would be asking some questions, if there is something very valid expert panel would like to bring out, do not hesitate to add on. Now, one question which comes up is, in a corporate setup, you often feel that the managers are actually getting more importance than the doctors who are working therein. Now, do you think, I take this question with Dr. Purendra Bhasin, although you have, yours is a, Dr. Purendra Bhasin, are you there? Yes. Do you feel that when you're running a corporate setup, the doctors in the practice could feel let down at some time because the senior person is always, surrounded and trailed by all the managers, and it apparently looks as if the managers are the more of greater importance to the practice? Your thoughts on that? You have to unmute yourself.
Very correct, Dr. Chitra. I think you are very correct in this, because we are not we all doctors are not trained that way, that we are being supervised or managed or guided by the managers. But definitely, if you have to run a corporate setup, so you have to have someone who can do your work, because the owner, being an ophthalmologist himself, him or herself, they have to look at the patient as well as do the management part. And these things have to be done by someone who can do it in a better way. So my take will be that definitely managers are required, and doctors also feel a bit uncomfortable with being guided by the managers. But uh, we have to train our managers that they should not cross a limit which is set by you.
Yeah.
That is very, very important. They should not go beyond that limit at any cost. And they have to come to you again, and you should intervene immediately and do the things and do the justice. And no one should feel that they are being sidelined, that no doctor should feel that they are being underestimated or sidelined or not being given due importance, both in terms of respect and in financial terms. Both are important, because all the doctors require growth in terms of work as well as finance.
Yeah. So in order for the administration to grow so that the management part runs smoothly so that they can concentrate on their work, these managers have to be seen all over the place. And that is a necessary evil which has to be withstood. But probably if there could be meetings, a lot of review meetings where the doctors are also involved along with the managers, I think that would expand the doctor's thought process, and probably he would come to appreciate the managerial roles better. So we need to look at what you can gain. Like Gayathri beautifully pointed out, like in a corporate practice, it's not just your own clinical evolvement which you see, but overall growth in your whole process about how you could fall in a smaller way, follow these corporates so that your practice also expands in a commensurate manner. But supposing there may be some amongst you all who have a practice adjacent to a corporate setup, and you feel that these corporate setups, they set targets to increase their baseline and all that. And sometimes this might be quite an irritant for a younger evolving practice in the neighborhood, because that sort of makes you feel that there is some lack of principles in it. But again, I would want thoughts of Gaurav, Rishi, Dr. Jeevan Tityal. Any of you can tell me what is the challenge these corporates face, why they need to have these concepts on increasing the targets or increasing their baseline, because I think their overheads are quite high. So they need to deal with it, and they have invested heavily. So they need to look at a faster trajectory. So I do not believe, whereas I feel that having a corporate setup adjacent to you is anyway going to limit your practice pattern. Dr. Gaurav, would you like to say anything on that?
Ma'am, it's a mixed bag, because, in one way, having a corporate setup next to you kind of puts you on your toes, and, healthy competition is always great. But there are times when it becomes an unhealthy competition, when the corporate, if it's not following, healthy practices, or, following certain practices, which may be eating into you with influencing your patients the wrong way, or trying to pull out your staff, or those other things, if they start happening, that makes it really, really unpleasant. So I think as long as there's healthy competition, it actually kind of stimulates you to grow. And in fact, what most people can learn from the corporates is that how to provide better patient care. So I think in that sense, it's actually good, because most hospitals and most clinics actually might not really be kind of looking too much into how to improve the patient or customer experience, and the corporates do that really well. And that's what we are up against, in almost all practices today, that how to make the patients happy. For example, the Vasan model was, everybody used to, kind of talk about it, that, the Vasan model is, they're corporates and they're kind of, giving, tea and coffee to the patients. And, they're kind of, they don't put emphasis on the doctors. There are no doctor faces. Yet patients were quite happy with Vasan, and Vasan did manage to actually, create a good, system of, employee training and patient customer experience, and they kind of made the doctors less relevant to the whole thing, and patients are still very happy with it. So I'm not saying that that was the best way to do it, but I think a healthy corporate near you is not something to be scared of. In fact, it tends to make you kind of perform better, and you have to keep reassessing yourself and keep improving your own systems to kind of evolve in a better way. And it's there's nothing wrong with it as long as it's not unhealthy.
Yes. Dr. Jeevan Dityal, heading a government setup, which is already one of the topmost institution, the topmost institution of the country. Do you feel that you also have to keep rising to a competition, or what would you advise these younger evolving practitioners to do better than where they are?
I think, the discussion was great.
Yeah.
As the time is changing so fast, and every sector, including government sector, has to move with the time. And we have to reform ourselves, our thinking, or execution of various aspects of, patient care, teaching, research. Everything has to be incorporated in building the entire infrastructure of a health system in the country. Today, if we look into a health system, the health providers are private sector. 80% of health sector providers are private sector nowadays. And in that also, corporate society has come in, and they are going to take over the entire area in future. The smaller practices are going to be a tougher time to sustain the type of practices which we are talking about. Making patient comfortable, or making patient feel better, or give them an area which they feel comfortable, rather than actually having a expert person dealing with them, in terms of a higher expertise, better equipment, better services, better experience. That would be a secondary aspect. The primary aspect is how it is being managed. As we nicely talked about, Gayathri brought up very nice issues. How the corporate society is making patients feel better rather than getting the highest level of treatment in that particular category. As far as government sectors are concerned, there is a lot of challenges, you all know, because it's not that uniformity in a government sector. There are institutions who are doing quite okay. There are institutions who are at a bottom line to provide all these care. So everything has to be sorted out. Today, if I take my own position, there's a great challenge to build up the area in a reputation wise to face the challenges from the private sector, corporate sectors, and patients come to us with a similar feeling that government sector should also improve. So I think apart from the services we provide, the management part also has to be improved here. So we do have now two types of management coming in an institution like ours. One is our hospital administration, which is managed by people who do MHA. And second is people who are in a government area. Those are administrative officers like IAS. So these two people are actually managing the hospital now in terms of managing the hospital area. But luckily, the patient care, the rules, regulation are still managed by the physicians. So if that happens in a private sector also, though I know that you do have a CEO, other things, but if the medical person becomes the head of that institution, things will improve. So that is my own way of thinking how the three aspects, the doctor, the management person, and the patients should be taken in such a way that we make things comfortable for all of us. Then it will be better for the entire country.
Yes.
Chitra ma'am, can I ask a question?
Yes, Gaurav.
I wanted to ask a question to Dityal sir, because he's like the chief of the most apex institution of the country, training ophthalmologists who kind of are reputed worldwide. So sir, has there been any change in the curriculum for today's postgraduates? Are you in some way trying to prepare them how they will enter? Like the whole idea of this today's webinar, Are we making any effort, or are we incorporating anything? Because this is one big challenge which they will face the moment they come out. You would have trained them amazingly in everything to do with ophthalmology, but should we now also be, at least the most premium institutions which offer a post-graduation program should be training them in how to, start a practice or how to start their career and face these
That's a
challenges, because
Even
these
something
challenges are
like
huge.
administration and management.
no,
At least
that's a great point. What we talk about today, Gaurav has nicely pointed out. We
Yes.
do lack that aspects in the training in a medical colleges or institution, during our undergraduation or subsequently in a post graduation or a super specialization in a way. So that part is lacking. So I think that we are making new efforts now, especially in AIMS New Delhi, to incorporate few things. One is we are adding the psychological aspect in our teaching, because so much of stress are going through our younger generation to compete amongst themselves, to compete coming out of that situation, and to complete these highly stressed courses. Many students do require a lot of psychological help also. So that aspect we are changing now. We have a lot of input in improving that aspect. Second aspect was are we making them to prepare them to be in a particular area of practice in future? Frankly speaking, we don't have such type of a teaching going on at this stage, but there should be a definite effort from our side to look into that aspect, especially have some, sort of people coming to government institutions like this, where they can be shown or given some sort of a demonstration, teaching, or a in-house assessment can be done to incorporate what type of a teaching module should be prepared, so that these people, I know that the jobs in the government sector are a very few nowadays. How many of people can become a teaching professionals, or how many of them are going to get a proper in the medical college? Very few. 99% of people will be outside in a atmosphere which is so tough. So, Gaurav, frankly speaking, we don't have any
Yeah.
that type of teaching to give them a professional, you can say, ways to excel in those areas. But
I
your
think-
point is right. We'll look into that.
Yes, especially the how to build up the financial, financial background, how to improve it, and some bank officials and people from different sectors of finance and management. You should probably add it to the curriculum, and that's a wonderful point that Gaurav has brought forth, because I think that is the need of the hour. Anaga, would you want to
Yes, ma'am.
ask any question?
Yeah,
with
in
respect-
fact, that was the exact question even I wanted to ask Dr. Jeevan sir. I think I and Dr. Gaurav are at a stage where we think that our next generation should be probably exposed to such things also.
Yes.
One more thing I just wanted to note, ma'am, excellent presentation, Dr. Gayatri.
Mm.
And the point that she made about the EMR, I think even when we start practice, corporate or not corporate, I think that is one of the most important things we should start, because that is going to give you all the statistics from the day you start practice. And that is the way how you can learn how your practice is growing, where you want to and where you need to improvise, and the areas that you need to focus on, including all your referral ophthalmologists or general practitioners. So EMR is something which I think is the most important thing what you need to invest in, even if you're not having actually some other great infrastructure and all that. Yeah.